Welcome guys, this is Kumar Gupta from Isha Training Solutions. I have a question, a new day, a new question from one of my students. His name is Salman, he's from US and he's preparing for the interview. So this question is for him. This morning he has asked me on WhatsApp. Salman, here is the question, and before I go to the question, I would like to thank Ali Mami. He has been recommending a lot of students to me, referring a lot of students to my institute for this performance testing using LoadRunner course. I would really thank him for that, for referring so many students and sending them across to me for the LoadRunner training needs. Thank you, Ali Mami. Well, for others, you can always contact me on this number 801-995-2427. You can WhatsApp me if you're not in US, in India, and India you can call me directly on this number or WhatsApp me or message me. And even from people from US, you can make a WhatsApp call on this number. Coming back to the question, Salman, here is your question. What is the difference between performance testing environment and production environment? Okay, so I believe this is something that I have covered as a part of my course, but since you have asked me, let me go ahead and explain the differences. But for this, a person who is viewing this video, they should know what is an environment, and if you have taken my course, definitely you know what is an environment. Okay, so for somebody, I'll talk really on the high level what is an environment. So let me take a notepad. Environment. Okay. So I would say an environment is a combination. I'm not talking about any definition. I'm talking in terms of in a layman language completely as to what it is. Okay. Combination of servers and the network connecting the network or the connections. In simple word, the connections. Okay, so the combination of the servers and the connections which is making these servers talk to each other, that's what we can basically call it as an environment. And we know that server is a combination of hardware and software. Time and again we talked about this in our class, okay, as to what is a server, and in the class we slowly developed like what is a server, how each server communicate with the others, and finally we got into the entire architecture. So an environment, now you can say that it's a combination of a hardware, software and the connections. Okay, and the connections. So in the real-time projects, okay, every team has their own environment. When I said every team has an own environment, a dev team would have their own environment, which is a dev environment or development environment. Okay, a manual testing team, or people usually call it as system testing. Okay, so very rarely we call it as a manual testing team in the real world. We call this as a system testing or ST testing. They have their own environment, which is system testing environment. And in the manual testing itself, there is another variation, which is system integration testing. Okay, they have their own environment, which is SIT environment. Okay, so and similarly, a performance testing team would have our own environment, which is performance testing environment. Okay, performance testing environment. Now, before getting into the difference between the performance testing environment and the production environment, let's see the difference between the performance testing environment and the environment which is given for a system testing team or system integration testing team or a dev team. Okay, so to explain that, let me take this slide over here. Okay, so let's assume that's our production environment. Okay, I'm making this video assuming that you know an entire architecture. Okay, now in this class I'm not going to explain or I cannot explain in this video as to what is an entire architecture. So if you have to understand this environment concept, okay, you have to understand what is a production environment. Okay, so For that, you need to know what is an entire architecture. Clearly, let's go ahead and let's assume this is your application and a test environment, okay, and that's your client. And let's say it has a web server, or one web server, two app servers, and a database server. Typically, that's what you have in a typical environment. In the real time, it would be much more complicated than this, but let's assume that's your environment. And since you have two application servers, definitely you should have a load balancer to balance the load across these two app servers. Now let's assume that's your production environment. Now if you go to a SIT, okay, or a system, let's go to the dev environment. What a dev environment looks like, or development environment looks like. So they would not give an exact replica of this environment. So what they would give is, they might give one app server, okay, not two app servers, because in the dev environment you're not applying any load. In fact, they would give an instance of an app server, an instance of a database server, and a web server. Okay, and it will not be an exact replica of it, but something like that. Not only in the hardware point of view, but also in the data point of view. In the database server, in the production environment, let's say it has 2 million records. So in the dev environment, they will not put 2 million records. They would put probably 100 or maybe 1,000 or 2,000 records into it. Okay, and they might not give a complete database. Probably they will give an instance of it. They might not give two app servers. Probably they will give an instance of it. So with as much, why would they do that? Because the building a full-fledged environment like this is extremely expensive, and there is no point building a full-fledged environment, spending so much money for a dev environment. Okay. Similarly, the same thing followed for a system testing environment or a system integration testing environment. Okay, they would not give a full-fledged environment. They would give a very, very minor part of it. In fact, they would create a minor part of this environment and share it across the system testing team and the system integration testing team and the dev team. And if you're wondering why every team should have their own environment, they would want their own environment so that they can play around with the data, they can do whatever it is, and they don't want other team members to step into their environment. So that's the reason why they create a different environments for different teams, so that they can do whatever they want with the environment. Okay, they can put the data, they can delete the data, they can just they can take the new patches and install it, or downgrade and go back to the older versions. They can do a whole lot with that. Okay, with that environment, it's totally their own stuff or their own environment. Now, when it comes to performance testing environment, okay, when it comes to performance testing environment, it should be just like production. Okay, whatever is the production, it should be just like production, and that's what is the beauty of performance testing environment. For example, you have a web server, the same web server should be over here. Similar, I don't say same, but a similar. Okay, if you have two app servers, you have to have two app servers, you have to have a similar database load balancer, and you have to have a similar database server. When I said similar, what do I mean when I say similar? Similar in terms of the hardware. Similar in terms of the hardware. For example, if the database server, okay, is having 32 GB of memory, okay, in production, so you should have the same 32 GB of memory in our performance testing environment as well. They have a processor with, let's say, I don't know, probably 8200 gigahertz, okay, of processing speed that you have for production. Okay, so the same processing speed should be made it available for our performance testing environment. Not only from the hardware standpoint, from the OS standpoint as well, it should be same. In the production, for the database server, let's say you are using a Solaris 8.0 version, okay, the same version with the same OS you have to use for performance as well. Okay, so not only from the hardware standpoint, from the OS standpoint as well, it should be similar. Not only that, from the database, let's say you are using an Oracle on the production, you have to use Oracle, whatever the version, let's say, I don't know the latest version, probably let's say you're using 10.5 version, I'm sure it's not the latest, but let's assume that's the version that you're using in production. The same database, which is Oracle, with the same version 10.5 needs to be used in performance testing as well. Not only that, let's say there are 2 million records which are there in production. The same 2 million records need not have to be the same records, but similar records, similar number. Okay, need not have to be the same, but similar number, 2 million records needs to be there in our performance testing environment. So not only from the hardware standpoint, not only from the OS standpoint, not only from the software or the version standpoint, but the number of records as well into similar. So this is for the database. Same thing should be applicable for the app server as well. Same thing is applicable for the web server as well. Okay, so in every which way, okay, maybe the versions, maybe the patches, maybe the number, the database, in every which way, the performance testing environment and the production environment should be similar. This is when whatever the response times that is experienced by the performance testing environment will be the same response times which will be experienced in the real environment. Okay, so this is the reason why a performance testing environment should be similar to the performance environment. Okay, now let's talking about the differences. Okay, as told you, it has to be similar. Then what are the differences? Honestly speaking, there shouldn't be, except that this is a production environment which is used by all the customers all over the globe, and this is a performance testing environment used only by the performance testing team. Okay, so that is the major difference. Theoretically, this is what it is, but when we go into the real-time projects, okay, mostly what I have seen is they would not give a performance testing environment, will not be an exact replica of production environment, because to replicate that it requires lots of money, invest lots of money into it, so it is not possible. Okay, they don't want to invest so much money just to do testing. So this is the reason why they usually go with half of this environment or 1/4 of the environment for the performance testing team. Okay, half of this environment, whatever it is, in all of them, like maybe from the hardware standpoint, maybe from the record standpoint, and maybe from the number of servers standpoint, they would go with somewhere half or 1/4 of the environment, and they give it to the performance testing team, and they assume that if the response times are good with that environment, definitely the response times would be better in the production environment. So this is the only difference that I have seen. So guys, anybody watching it and they have done a lot of performance testing and they have observed other differences, please let me know on this YouTube at the bottom in the comment section. I would really want to look into it and then want to add, if those comments made sense to me, I would like to add that to the video. So these are the differences that I think at this point I can think of at this point of view, at this point of time. So yeah, as I've told you, if you know more, please post it over here on the comment section. I would really wanted to read it. So thank you guys on behalf of Isha Training Solutions. I hope this interview question will help you to clear the interviews. And as I've told you, if you are interested in taking my trainings, you can always call me on this number. You can make a WhatsApp call, or you can make a WhatsApp message, or you can call me, or you can just simply send out an email to this email address, which is kgupta.testingtraining@gmail.com. Okay, so right now I have 2 courses available. One is LoadRunner Basics and Advanced, and LoadRunner SAPGUI protocol. So I would like to add other protocols as well, like web services, Citrix, RDP, and SAP web and web services. and Java user at some point of time, but that's a big plan for the next 1 year maybe. So I'll continue to add for other protocols, but these are the two courses which are readily available right now with me. So you can purchase the recorded videos or you can enroll for the live classes. Thank you so much for listening to these videos. And again, I would like to thank Ali Mami for referring so many US students to me, and thank you Ali Mami and Salman. This video is purely for you, but I would want it to help other students as well, so that to get a feel for this interview questions. Thank you guys. See you in the next video.